Could you expound on that somewhat?
Well, they just use electronics to change the weather condition. They don't use seeding the cloud by spraying chemicals in it to cause it to cluster more moisture and all that kind of stuff. They use electronics. They use antennas and change the sky itself into a speaker and bounce sounds off it by changing electrical force. It's just one of those mechanisms. Every cell has a magnetism to it, an electrical charge to it, and a chemical in it. So some people can manipulate the cells with chemistry. Some people can manipulate the cells with magnetism. Some can use electricity. So we know all of these things that are alive have magnetism and electricity to them. So they've learned how to manipulate the electrical charge of these minerals, of the water, of the air, and that way they can manipulate the weather.
Yeah. So we, oh man. So these things are not so far-fetched as far as them controlling weather and doing things as far as like earthquakes and
oh, they create earthquakes and hurricanes, the thunderstorms, to create famines on one end to manipulate the market. It has nothing to do about the weather, so manipulating power. They have the power, and we're looking at the wrong thing. They've been manipulating the weather since the Vietnam War. When you see something on TV, you're about 20 years behind. At least 20 years behind. This whole thing about behavior changes people's behavior, which they used to call it a project, remember?
yes.
That was a behavior modification project that they did first on rats. Put them in boxes, put the elders over here, the youth over here. They did that with rats, and they stacked them up, and they found out it disrupted the unity of the family, and they called that behavior modification project. Then they built some buildings, and they called it a project. And nobody associates it with the project. They ran on the rats first before they did it on people. Now they tore down the projects because it served its purpose. So when they talk about things to the public, they're 20 years behind the whole thing.
Oh man, this is real deep. This is real deep. I have one more question in this segment, and question is, as far as our people and the condition that we are in, how do we get back to certain things that that they say we have the capacity to be, as far as becoming your higher self, when the water is contaminated, food is denatured, the air is pretty much toxic? How can you get back to some of if those are some of the things to get the way to get back to those things? How can we actually do that when those things are contaminated?
Well, we're not thinking military. We're dealing with some military people here called Europeans, Caucasian, Crackozoids, whatever you want to call them. And these are European people, and they're military people. They're always either getting ready to fight someone, or someone's fighting them, or they're involved in a fight. Those three things must exist at all times, which we call the law of the caves. So we're not approaching this thing. You don't fight the weather. You don't try to clean up the water. You don't try to straighten up the educational system. The problem is the Europeans. And we're still instead fighting the testicles of an octopus, you know, instead of the brain of the octopus. We're fighting Frankenstein instead of Dr. Frankenstein. We're misdirecting the whole attack here. Our problem is not the weather. It is not the educational system. It's white women and white men, and not white women first, because they drive the civilization.
That's deep. Brother, on that note, we're going to close out this session, and we thank you for being in with the Gilchrist Experience. But they're telling me that I do have a little bit more time before the end of this session. So I just expound on on some other things. When we spoke earlier, we spoke about Kemet.
Yes. Egypt
and,
is
Egypt.
People call it.
Yeah, some people call it Egypt. So some people that's not too sophisticated on knowing as far as Egypt is concerned. Our ancestors laid foundations as far as medicine. I'm only asking you that because this is your your former category. But as far as Imhotep and how he actually, they say he pretty much was the father of medicine, but I know that his mother was probably most instrumental in giving him a lot of those different things too. Imhotep and the foundation that he laid towards these medical systems that we have today, do the Europeans know about Imhotep and as far as all the accomplishments that he's given towards them?
I don't.
And I'm saying in their system because they have the catechist and they have all these different things, these symbolisms that go back to that.
They have the caduceus, which is the intertwined snake, and they call him Aesculapius in the Hippocratic Oath.
Okay.
His name is Aesculapius, and all doctors swear to this black man called Aesculapius, and Aesculapius is the Greek name for Imhotep. So whether Europeans or white people are aware of that, I don't give a damn. I want black people to be aware of it, frankly. That's my whole objective, to resurrect our race. So that the contributions he made, he wrote a book that they call the Ibers Papyrus, which was stolen by a German fellow. And it's a compendium, it's a collection of medical books. And he didn't write all of them. Some of those books are written by female medical doctors. So he just collected a lot of works. I don't know whether he did all the things we say he did. That's not important to me, because African people don't claim information that belongs to God. So we didn't like sign our name to a poem. We didn't do that. We said, this has come from God, that kind of thing. But the surgical concepts that they use in medicine, that comes from Africa. Surgery is an African thing. But we cut a wound, we would put lines on it like you do on a globe, longitude and latitude lines, and we put those lines on the skin before we cut it. Then we cut the skin, and then we sew it, we line up the lines again so we wouldn't get that scar tissue. We put golden seal in it, which eliminates keloids. So there's a whole herbal process that goes with surgery, which is not in it. So we don't recognize that as an African science. But all that comes out of Africa. Surgery, acupuncture, massage, chiropractic, all that was written about in our ancestors' books. But we have a lot of thieves who take our stuff and then say it's their stuff. The Japanese, Chinese, Europeans, they're a bunch of thieves. They have to recognize where this thing comes from in order for them to be healthy. But I'm not about solving their problem. They're sick and they need therapy, all of them. But my issue is so we can be aware of things.
On that note, brother, I mean, we're kind of out of time for this segment. And, wow. I mean, there's so many more questions I definitely have to ask. And when we come back, we'll definitely do that. Thanks for being with the Gilchrist Experience. I'm Brother Jonathan Saul, and this is Brother LLaila Afrika. We appreciate y'all for being here. Peace and hotep.
The country from
Quiet on set.
Let's talk about the Nile Valley. How the Greeks robbed Herodotus. You know, when I took history,
Okay, tell me when you're ready. Okay, quiet on the set.
But you have to...
Quiet on the set. 5.
We're going to go back to our
4,
times, the 50s.
3.
All right, to explain all these malfunctions.
He's trying to get every word in wedgewise. Ready? Okay.
Welcome back. We're doing the second half of the Gilchrist Experience. I'm sure you enjoyed the first half with Dr. Afrika and my associate producer, Mr. Jonathan Sahu, Brother Sahu. Excellent, excellent. I was doing the master control back then. I listened to the conversation. It's very interesting. Very interesting.
The man sit next to the man sit next to the man.
Well, we all learn from one another.
That's right.
That's
That's
all
what it's about.
So, you know, we have to learn that, I think that's a problem with most black people. They don't know how to pass on their information.
Yeah.
We seem to cling to what we know because we can get further ahead. You know, the crab in the barrel syndrome that we seem to suffer from, one of the malfunctions that we really suffer from is to, when you don't love yourself, you can't love your brother. And that is the biggest problem, the psychological problem. And we were just talking about the food industry and how they bamboozle us the same way they do when it comes to we as a people. And Jonathan, you're a younger man, and Dr. Afrika and I go back to, we can think back to the 50s when we were really brainwashed, when you knew nothing about Africa except Tarzan.
That's about it.
You know?
African men ran from him. One man.
But but you know what I thought about most when I saw Tarzan? I said, why does Tarzan get a suntan? How the hell is going to be an African and don't get a suntan? I said, how is it that, I mean, that's not physically possible.
Right.
For anybody to sit in the sun and not get a suntan. But Tarzan never got a suntan. So it was always a, God, it was weird. It was weird. But you have to understand how, I think, we always laughed at it. I always laughed at white people were funny. Because everything they talked about seemed to be stupid to me. But I was up here in New York, you see, and we were brutalized quietly.
Yeah.
You know, we weren't openly, you know, we weren't beaten in public, in other words, you know. We were beaten in private. But down south, it was a completely different world.
Yeah.
You know, I remember hearing about the South, and when I really, this will register with you, 1955, Emmett Till. You remember Emmett Till? You know what Emmett Till was?
Sure.
Can you imagine being in New York? I was 14 too. I was Emmett Till's age, right? And my neighborhood, I was on Sugar Hill, 147th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. So I'm in the middle of New York, and integration was working in New York. So we thought. I mean, all the white merchants were there. You go down to Riverside Drive, and you had nothing but white people down there. And I went to PS 186. I'm on Amsterdam and Broadway's one block over. So we were in an integrated neighborhood. And the Hispanics have always been on 135th Street and down there. And my teachers were Italian. And, I think I had a Greek teacher. And all the cops were Irish. And walked the beat. And they were pretty friendly with us. So I thought I was in, you know, I thought I didn't know about Africa. All I know about Africa was Tarzan. And when Emmett Till happened, I was, what? I mean, how could that happen? How could something like that happen? Because it was so brutal and what, for whistling at a white woman? Until I got to the document and saw the series Eyes on the Prize, when that came out in the 70s, did I really realize the true story of what it was all about. And I had I mean, I just thought it was, and he was my age, and I said, no, how the hell could something like that happen? Now, you were raised in the South, weren't you?
Yeah, my folks are from Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
My grandparents are from Charleston.
So 1955 down in that neighborhood was like what?
Of course, we had this segregation, you know. You
Right.
couldn't eat in white stores and all that kind of stuff that went on. And we had the Gold Dust Twins. Blackface was on products, like Uncle Ben's and Aunt Jemima. They had used a lot of black faces to sell detergent and all that kind of stuff, and to sell tobacco. And so they basically made us into something inferior through these big commercials, which were all over the world.
Right,
You know?
right.
And that was very impacting to see Mantan Moreland and,
Oh, yeah.
you know, Step and Fetch It. We had all of that
Right.
coming at us, all that white racism where we laughed at Mantan Moreland, who ran from his own shadow.
Right.
And,
Right.
and they used to stick his head inside of a watermelon and eat it and
Right.
things like that. You were subjected to that all